You are currently the only person in this conference.
Hello everyone, a very good afternoon guys. So guys, I Prateek Sir, first of all welcome you to Plutus IAS, and today we are going to analyze paper 2 of economics optional. The first paper, that was paper 1, we have already analyzed it, okay? And today we are going to analyze paper 2, okay? In paper 1 there were few people, not several, few people commented that the explanation was very good, but graphs were not there. So guys, I'll suggest you to go through the video once again. Wherever it was necessary, the graphs have been drawn. Okay, it's not like that in economics each and every question is going to have a graph. In few theories, graphs are not required. So wherever it was required, the graph I have drawn in the class itself. Fine. Anyway, so let's get started. Section A, there are 5 questions. Each question is of 10 marks, right? First question is, distinguish between the Jamindari system and the Rayotwari system of land revenue under the British rule in India. So see guys, both the systems were prevalent during British time, and they are asking you to distinguish between them. So first of all, you could have given an introduction that during the British colonial period, different systems of land revenue were introduced in India to maximize revenue collection. That is the keyword here, that all these systems were used to maximize the revenue collection. Among them, the Jamindari system and the Rayotwari system were the most prominent. While the Jamindari system focused on landlords as intermediaries, the Rayotwari system directly dealt with the cultivators. This system had significant social, economic, and political impacts on Indian society. Then we could distinguish. So first, if we talk in terms of introduction, so Jamindari system was introduced by Lord Cornwallis in 1793 under the Permanent Settlement Act, whereas Rayotwari system was introduced by Sir Thomas Munro and Captain Reed in 1820 in Madras Presidency. Areas implemented in Jamindari system: Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, parts of UP and Varanasi, whereas in Rayotwari, Madras, Bombay, Assam, and parts of Karnataka. Then, if you talk about revenue collector, so under Jamindari system, Jamindars acted as intermediaries between British government and farmers. That means Jamindars collected the revenue. Whereas under Rayotwari system, direct settlement with individual cultivator was done. Ownership of land, Jamindars became hereditary owners of land, peasants were tenants, okay? Whereas Ryots, the cultivator, Rayotwari means, Ryots stands for cultivators, the farmers. Ryots were recognized and as owners of land as long as they paid revenue. So until and unless they are paying revenue, they are the owners of land. Revenue demand in Jamindari, it was fixed permanently, did not change even if production increased. So even if the production increased, revenue was same. Whereas in Rayotwari, revenue was revised periodically based on soil quality and crop yield. Peasants' condition under Jamindari, it was exploited by Jamindars through high rents, forced labor, and evictions. Whereas in Rayotwari, although directly dealing with the government, Ryots still faced heavy tax burdens and often fell into debt. Impact on agriculture. So in Jamindari led to neglect of land improvement, since Jamindars were more interested in revenue collection than productivity of land. Whereas in Rayotwari encouraged better cultivation practices in theory, but high taxes still discouraged investment. So these were the differences that you could have written under Jamindari and Rayotwari system. Conclusion: Jamindari and Rayotwari system reflected different approaches of the British in exploiting India's agrarian economy. While the Jamindari system created a class of powerful intermediaries who oppressed peasants, the Rayotwari system bypassed landlords but still burdened cultivators with heavy taxes. Ultimately, both systems prioritized British revenue interests over the welfare of Indian farmers that we all know, resulting in widespread poverty, indebtedness, and rural distress. Moving on. Next question is, what were the major impacts of commercialization of agriculture on Indian farmers during pre-independence India? Discuss. So again, the question came from pre-independence era, and they're asking you that when British introduced this system of commercialization of agriculture, so what was the impact of it? Okay. So during British rule, especially after mid-19th century, Indian agriculture underwent a significant transformation from subsistence farming to commercial farming. Farmers were increasingly encouraged and often forced to grow cash crops like indigo, cotton, jute, tea, and opium instead of food grains. This change was driven by colonial economic interest and had far reaching consequences on Indian farmers and rural society. So, what were these? Number one, shift from food crops to cash crops. Farmers were compelled to cultivate indigo, cotton, and opium to meet the demands of British industries. Number two, this reduced the area under food grain production, leading to food shortage. So this led to shortage of food. Number two, exploitation by moneylenders and middlemen. Farmers needed loans to buy seeds and pay land revenue. Trapped in debt cycles, many peasants lost their land to moneylenders. So that's where moneylenders came in. They started lending money, and these farmers, they were entrapped in this debt trap. Okay. Number three, increased dependence on global market. Agricultural production became linked to international demand. Fluctuation in global prices often pushed farmers into poverty when prices fell. Next, famines and food insecurity. With more land under cash crops and less under food grains, famines became frequent. Obviously, there will be shortage of food because most of the land were used for the production of cash crops, not the food crops. So there was shortage of food leading to famines. The Great Bengal Famine of 1943 is a stark example of this crisis where millions were killed. Okay, and Churchill was mainly held responsible for it. Then decline of traditional rural economy. Traditional village-based self-sufficient economies collapsed. Rural artisans suffered as British manufactured goods replaced Indian products. Peasant distress and revolts. Harsh revenue demand combined with exploitation triggered several revolts, like number one, Indigo Revolt in 1859-60, Deccan Riots of 1875, participation in non-cooperation and civil disobedience movement. Conclusion, the commercialization of agriculture under British rule was aimed at serving imperial economic interest rather than the welfare of Indian farmers. So welfare of Indian farmers was overlooked, and the agenda was what? Agenda was betterment of British Empire. While it integrated India into the global economy, it also caused food security, poverty, indebtedness, and rural distress. Ultimately, this policy deepened the agrarian crisis and sowed seeds of widespread discontent, which later fueled India's freedom struggle. Okay. Next is, what were the economic consequences of drain of wealth theory as practiced during the British rule in India? Analyzed. So the term drain of wealth was popularized by Dada Bhai Naroji in his book Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. It referred to the continuous transfer of India's wealth and resources to Britain without any adequate economic return, and that's what Britishers did. This systematic economic exploitation was a cornerstone of British colonial policies and had long-lasting consequences on India's economic and society. So what were these consequences? Number one, depletion of India's financial resources. Huge sums of money were transferred to Britain through home charges, that is salaries, pensions, administrative expenses, etc. Second, profits from trade and industries. This was also the methodology to move wealth from India. Third, payments to British officials and investors. This left little capital for domestic development. Next is collapse of traditional industries. Heavy imports of British manufactured goods flooded Indian market, ruining local industries like textile, handicrafts, and metallurgy. Millions of artisans and weavers lost their livelihood, leading to deindustrialization. So that led to the phase of deindustrialization. With Indian resources, with Indian wealth, Britishers started the period of industrialization in England, whereas this policy of theirs rendered India into the period of deindustrialization. Such a huge blow to Indian methodology of industrialization and overall Indian industrialization that has left its mark till date. India directly jumped from agrarian economy to service sector. Industrialization was never ever prosperous in India, and the discredit of it goes especially to Britishers and their policies. Anyway, next is stagnation of Indian agriculture. High land revenue demands and forced cultivation of cash crops like indigo, cotton, opium diverted resources from food production. Farmers became increasingly dependent on moneylenders, leading to widespread indebtedness. Okay, as I already told you, that due to high land revenue demands and forced cultivation of cash crops, resource diversification and decrease in food production occurred. It also rendered farmers dependent on money lenders, and it also led to huge spread of indebtedness. Next is rise of chronic poverty and famines. With wealth flowing out of India, investment in infrastructure, irrigation, and welfare was neglected. No focus was laid on the infrastructure development, irrigation, or welfare of Indians. Frequent famines, such as those in 1876-78, 1899-1900, resulted from lack of food security and poor relief measures. Then, absence of industrialization. Britain deliberately kept India as a supplier of raw material and a market for finished goods. Unlike other colonies, India's industrial base remained stagnant, preventing economic modernization. This was deliberately done by Britishers. They curbed our industries, they tried to ruin our industries, and they ruined it. Okay, and other colonies, they had some industrial base in comparison to India. India was rendered baseless as far as industrialization is concerned. Widening economic inequality. A small group of British officials and zamindars grew wealthy, while the majority of Indians faced unemployment, poverty, and hunger. The rural-urban divide deepened. Urban areas became more advanced in comparison to rural areas, more equipped with basic amenities in comparison to rural areas. Conclusion: the drain of wealth under British rule systematically impoverished India by depleting its resources, destroying traditional industries, stalling industrialization, and worsening poverty and famines. While Britain prospered, India's economy was left underdeveloped and dependent. a legacy that shaped its post-independence economic challenges. It was a legacy, and these were very big challenges which we faced after independence and are still facing, as I told you in case of industries. Next is, why did the British led to the destruction of India's traditional cotton industry? Discuss. India was once known as the Manchester of the East due to its thriving cotton and textile industry. Indian, muslin, calico, and chintz were world famous for their fine quality and craftsmanship. However, under British colonial rule, this flourishing industry suffered a systematic decline. British economic policies, technological advancement in Britain, and exploitative trade practices combined to destroy India's traditional cotton industry. Imposition of discriminatory trade policies. Number one. So here, British imposed heavy export duties on Indian cotton textile. Heavy duties were imposed on export, making them expensive in European markets, so that these products become expensive and Europeans do not purchase it. Simultaneously, British manufactured textiles were imported into India duty-free, flooding local markets and undercutting Indian artisans. Whereas the textiles that were manufactured by British, that textile flooded Indian market as they removed any import duty on it. Okay, so it became cheap. Again, driving out Indian artisans from domestic market as well. Industrial revolution in Britain. The advent of industrial revolution in the late 18th century gave Britain access to mechanized textile mills. Machine-made British cloth was cheaper and faster to produce than India's hand-woven textile, making it difficult for Indian weavers to compete. That's why Indian weavers could not compete. Next, exploitation of raw cotton. India was turned into raw material supplier for Britain's textile industry. British policies encouraged the export of raw cotton at low prices to English mills, leaving little for Indian weavers. Then decline of traditional weavers. With markets flooded by cheap British cloth and lack of access to raw material, millions of Indian weavers became unemployed. So with these policies, guys, what happened was that when the clothes, the textiles that were woven by Indian weavers, it was not purchased neither in domestic land and obviously not in the foreign land, due to the policy of Britishers by imposing heavy taxes on the export and flooding Indian market with their cheap machine-made textile. So all these weavers, they lost their job, they shifted their profession, thereby killing this legacy, killing this major industry of India. Okay. Many skilled artisans were forced into agricultural labor or low-paying jobs, leading to economic distress. So these people who were having a craft with themselves, they were master of their craft, now they turned into menial labors, low-paying jobs or agricultural workers. Absence of modern industrial development in India. The British discouraged the growth of modern textile mills in India to prevent competition with Manchester and Lancashire. So they discouraged, they did not allow modern textile industries to develop in India, because if modern textile industry would have been established in India, then it would have been a competition to Britishers. Getting my point? To British craft, to British textile, it would have been a competition. So that's why they never allowed Indian textile to flourish, Indian textile industry to flourish here. Infrastructure development like railways was designed to extract raw materials rather than support local industries. Railway was their plan to supply raw materials in a faster way. Okay. Next is famines and poverty. The collapse of the cotton industry, combined with high land revenue policies and forced cultivation of cash crops worsened rural poverty. Famines became frequent due to the shift from food crops to cotton and indigo. When you are going to shift from food crops to cotton indigo, there will be shortage of food, and it became a regular pattern in India. Conclusion: the destruction of India's traditional cotton industry was not accidental but a deliberate outcome of British colonial policies by imposing unfair tariffs. So it was not that it happened out of blue, it was a deliberate effort done by Britishers. Okay, by imposing, and how they did it, by imposing unfair tariffs, exploiting raw materials, and prioritizing British textile interests. The British converted India from a leading textile exporter into a market for British goods. This led to mass unemployment, poverty, and economic decline, sowing resentment and fueling the Indian nationalist movement. Next is describe the phase of colonization in British India. So the colonization of India by British was not a single event but a gradual process spread over nearly 2 centuries. The British initially arrived as traders under the East India Company, but over time they transformed into territorial rulers and later established direct imperial control. So they entered India as traders in the disguise of East India Company. From traders, they became rulers of territories, and then after that, finally, they turned into the imperial rulers of India. This process can broadly be divided into three major phases, each marked by different objectives, policies and impacts on India's economy, society, and politics. So the entire period of British India, British rule can be segregated into three phases. Okay, and each phase is having its own policy, own motive, and own modus operandi. So first is phase one. This was the trading phase here from 1600 to 1757. The British East India Company was established in 1600 under a royal charter by Queen Elizabeth I. The company set up factories and trading posts in Surat, Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta, focused primarily on trade in spices, cotton, silk, indigo, and other goods. Competed with other European powers like Portuguese, Dutch, and French. The Battle of Plassey, 1757, where the company defeated Sirajud-Dowlah, marked the end of this phase and the start of territorial ambitions. So after 1757, from traders, they turned into territorial rulers. Phase 2, company's political expansion and control. This phase lasted for 100 years. Initial phase was for 157 years. So here, Battle of Buxar, 1764, secured the Diwani rights, that is tax collection, of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. Then territorial expansion through subsidiary alliance introduced by Lord Wellesley, doctrine of lapse by Lord Dalhousie. Then introduction of new land revenue system, Jamindari system in Bengal, Rayotwari system, Madras and Bombay, Mahalawari system in North India, transformation of India into supplier of raw material and a market for British finished goods. Growing discontent due to economic exploitation, social reforms, and religious interference eventually led to the revolt of 1857, which marked the end of company rule. Phase 3, direct British Crown rule from 1858 to 1947, that is 90 years. After the revolt of 1857, the Government of India Act transferred power from company to British Crown, appointment of a viceroy and a centralization of administration, expansion of infrastructure, especially railways, telegraph, postal system, but mainly to serve British economic interest. India's economy was reshaped to suit Britain's needs. export of raw material, cotton, jute, indigo, import of British manufactured goods leading to deindustrialization, as I already discussed. Then rise of Indian nationalism, formation of Indian National Congress in 1885, national movements like Swadeshi movement, non-cooperation movement, civil disobedience movement, and Quit India movement. Finally, after prolonged struggle, India achieved the independence on 15th of August 1947. Conclusion: the colonization of India occurred in three distinct phases, from trade to territorial and finally to direct imperial rule. While the British introduced modern infrastructure, education, and legal framework, their policies were primarily aimed at economic exploitation and political dominance. This process led to deindustrialization, poverty, and social disruption, but it also gave rise to nationalist consciousness, which ultimately resulted in India's independence. Okay. Question number 2, first part. It is of 20 marks. It is saying, is land reform necessary to improve agricultural productivity in India? Discuss. So, agriculture is the backbone of, this is introduction. Agriculture is the backbone of India's economy, employing nearly 45% of the population. However, agricultural productivity in India has historically remained low due to unequal land distribution, small fragmented holdings, outdated farming techniques, and socio-economic inequalities. Land reforms policies aimed at redistributing land and improving land ownership patterns have been considered a key tool to address these challenges and boost agricultural productivity. Importance of land reform in improving productivity. So, redistribution of land. Historically, large tracts of fertile land were concentrated in the hands of zamindars and wealthy landlords. Okay, so as I have already discussed that under British policies, they were landowners, they were called zamindars, and large part of land belonged to them. They employed peasants as farm workers, as laborers. They worked and they cultivated and sowed the land for them. Redistributing surplus land to landless farmers ensures better equity and provides cultivators a direct incentive to improve productivity. So, what happens here is that since the major chunk of land was under the clutches of zamindars and influential landlords, therefore, the farmers, which were actually employed as workers, they were farm workers. It became necessary after independence to give land to them, to introduce land reforms, so that you can reduce the divide. Okay, and a new class of farmers called as marginal farmers were born, who were the owners of the land. Then abolition of intermediaries. Systems like zamindari and jagirdari exploited peasants and discouraged investment in land improvement. Abolishing intermediaries empowered actual tillers, making them responsible for cultivation and enhancing productivity. So systems like zamindari and tehsildari, they were actually the exploitative system. Zamindars and jagirdars, they exploited peasants. Okay, so when these systems and intermediaries were abolished, then actually tillers of land became the owners of land, and then the productivity also improved. Consolidation of fragmented holdings. Okay, in many states, land is divided into tiny scattered plots, making mechanization and modern techniques difficult. Land consolidation promotes efficient irrigation, better crop planning, and higher yield. So what happened, guys, that farmers or the land was divided in such a way that there were small fragments of land. One individual is owner of first fragment, second is owner of second fragment, and so on. Small fragments of land were there. Now, if you want to increase production of agrarian goods, if you want to increase agricultural produce, so you need big chunks of land where you can practice, where you can practice or you can apply the modern techniques of tilling. Okay, this was done by the efforts of Indian government. Indian government took all these land, let's say 1 hectare from here, 1 hectare from here, 1 hectare from here, and collectively gave 3 hectares of land. So in these 3 hectares, production could be increased because this is a major chunk of land, and here technological improvement that has been achieved could be applied and production could be amplified. Then security of tenure. Tenants under old system had insecure rights and thus little incentive to invest in soil improvement or irrigation. Granting ownership rights motivates cultivators to adopt better farming practices. See guys, under old system, as I told you, farmers were just the tenants. They were not the owner of land. And when they were not the owner of land, obviously they were not interested in the improvement of the soil quality to improvise the land. Okay, they were just doing their jobs. But once you make them the owners, so now they are responsible for the land. Now they will take better care of it, and they will keep an eye on the productivity of land, will take measures for improvement of the productivity of land. Facilitating modernization and credit access, farmers with clear land titles can access institutional credit, invest in seeds, fertilizers, and machinery, thereby improving productivity. So, when farmers are the owners of land, they can easily get loan from the banking system. They will invest in the seeds because land is there, okay, and fertilizers and machinery. And as I told you, overall productivity would increase. Challenges and limitations of land reforms, implementation issues. Land ceiling laws were often poorly enforced. Influential landlords evaded reform. So, yeah, this happened in India. The plan was very good, the land reforms were very good, but when you come to implementation of it, it was very poorly implemented in India. There were only few places or few states where these land reforms were implemented, not in other states. Why? Because these jamindars, these rich landowners, they have huge connections with the government of India. Okay, they postponed it, they challenged it in court because they were wealthy also, and these policies could not be implemented, okay, in many parts of India. Population pressure, subdivision of holding continues due to inheritance, leading to marginal farms. As I said, that a father has 1 hectare of land, he has 4 kids. Now these 4 kids will inherit this land. Now land will be divided again into 4 parts. Now each kid will have, let's say, three kids. So later on, this land will again be divided, subdivided into 12 more parts, and so on. So due to this inheritance issue, the land got divided into smaller and smaller parts. Regional disparities. Some states like Kerala and West Bengal succeeded, but others saw minimal impact. As I told you, that these reforms were implemented in few states only. Okay. Then technological needs. Land reforms alone cannot ensure productivity without modern inputs, irrigation, and infrastructure. So if you only talk of land reforms, they cannot be that productive. Okay, you need infrastructure, you need modern technology to increase your production. Okay. The way forward. Integration with technology, combine land reforms with precision farming, mechanization, and irrigation facilities if you want to advance. Okay. Then digital land records, implement transparent digitalization of land ownership to avoid disputes. Then support services ensures availability of credit, extension services, market and storage to land reforms effective. So guys, support services are also necessary. Farmers need credit, extension of services, they need market, they need storage facilities to store their produce. All this is also necessary. Conclusion: land reforms are necessary but not sufficient for improving agricultural productivity in India. By ensuring equitable access to land, secure tenure, and consolidation of holding, land reforms lay the foundation for efficiency and modernization. However, to achieve sustainable growth, they must be complemented with technological upgrades, institutional credit, and market support. Okay, only a holistic approach combining land reforms and modern agricultural practices can unlock India's full agricultural potential. So, only land reforms cannot do. There are other factors, modern technology, storage, markets, all these have to be provided. When all these things are undertaken simultaneously, then only there can be an improvement. Next question: critically analyze the constraints of public and private capital formation in Indian agriculture. So they are talking about public and private capital that is formed under agriculture. So capital formation in agriculture refers to the investment of funds in developing agricultural infrastructure, improving technology, and enhancing productivity. In India, both public and private sector investment play vital roles. However, agricultural growth has been hampered by inadequate capital formation due to structural, financial, and policy related constraints. A critical analysis of these limitations is essential to understand the challenge and frame effective solution. So what are the constraints? So first is constraint on public capital formation in agriculture. So public capital formation includes government investment in infrastructure, irrigation, research, extension services, and rural development. However, there are several constraints in it. Okay. So when we talk about public capital formation, that means when government is investing in it. Okay, and when government is investing, that means when government is investing, so the investment that is done by government, that we are discussing. Fine, just a minute guys. Okay. Okay, guys. So yeah, sorry, huh? Let's continue. I went to drink water actually. So first was decline in public expenditure. Since the 1990s, economic liberalization, the share of agriculture in total public investment has steadily declined. Okay. Funds are often diverted to non-productive subsidies like fertilizer, electricity, and food procurement, reducing resources for infrastructure. So starting from 1990s itself, the share of agriculture, if you talk about the investment that is done by government, so the percentage government used to contribute out of its total investment in agriculture, it is declining. Getting my point? The funds that are provided by government, now they go for subsidies, for fertilizer, for electricity, for giving food procurement, rather than developing the infrastructure of agriculture. Second is fiscal constraint. High fiscal deficit at both central and state level limits funds available for long-term agricultural investment. Okay. So if we talk about fiscal deficit, so we all know that fiscal deficit, whether in terms of center or of state, is quite high. So when fiscal deficit is high, that means government does not have much money to spend on agriculture. Therefore, again, the investment in agriculture would decline due to this large fiscal deficit. Next, priority is often given to sectors like industry, defense, and urban infrastructure over rural development. So, industry, defense, urban infrastructure, these are prioritized over rural development, over agricultural development. Inefficient resource utilization, corruption, delays, and mismanagement reduces the effectiveness of public investment. So even when government invests, due to leakages, the money is not going to the deserving individual, rather the brokers, they are taking benefit of it. Okay, the corruption which is there. So, and the delay it takes from government to reach in the farmer, let's say farmer, the delay it takes, it spoils the entire scenario. Projects like irrigation schemes often suffer from cost overruns and time delays. The irrigation projects that government launches, it takes time to make such projects. And as time passes by, the budget that was allocated for that project, the budget will be surpassed. Why budget will be surpassed? Because due to inflation, prices of everything is going to increase. For example, prices of cement will increase. Yeah. So now it will become more costly affair. So again, it will get delayed to get extra budget. So it becomes cyclic. Then policy inconsistencies. Frequent changes in agricultural policies create uncertainty and discourage consistent investment. The policies that government adopts for agriculture, they are also variable. They also keep on changing. Okay. Lack of coordination between central and state government affects project implementation. Central and state governments are not coordinated. If in center there's government of one party and in state there is government of another party, so there would be grudges between them. And what is going to suffer? Agriculture will suffer due to that as well. Constraints on private capital formation in agriculture. Okay. And again, guys, these questions that we have done in the notes of Indian economy, paper 2, that I have provided in the class, all these things are there. Everything. Okay. So constraints on private capital formation in agriculture. Private capital formation includes farmers' investment in irrigation, seeds, fertilizers, machinery, and technology. However, it faces multiple challenges. First is low farm income, and rising cost. With stagnant crop prices, rising cost of input like fertilizer, seed, labor, farmers have limited surplus. So when they have limited surplus, how can they invest? Limited access to institutional credit. Small and marginal farmers often lack collateral and thus depend on money lenders charging high interest rates. Farmers, small farmers, they do not have collateral to mortgage and get a loan from banking institution or from any other financial institution. So rather, they will take loan from money lenders. Next, formal banking penetration in rural areas remain uneven, restricting credit availability. Again, banks are also there. Banks are called, these banks are commercial banks. They want to do business, they want to make profit. So they do not expand in rural areas. Even if they expand in comparison to urban areas, the expansion is very less. So banks are not available to provide loans. Small and fragmented land holdings, as I told you earlier also, that a single piece of land gets divided and subdivided. So small holdings they have of land. Over 86% of Indian farmers own less than 2 hectares of land, making large scale investment in modern machinery and irrigation unavailable. When they have so small land holding, how can large investment can be done in irrigation and all? Market uncertainties. Farmers face price volatility due to fluctuating demand, climate risk, and global market trends. Lack of assured procurement system discourages risk taking and investment. Okay. So again, in market, the demand of the produce that farmers are producing, it is fluctuating. It keeps on moving up and down. That is a discouragement. How to invest more when we don't know that whether the product will be sold or not. Okay. Then there is no guarantee by government that government is going to procure the produce of farmers. That again creates the situation of uncertainty. Then low technological adoption, limited awareness and training prevents farmers from adopting modern farming techniques. They are not that much aware, not that much educated, so they have not adopted technological aspects of farming. Absence of effective extension service further slows down private investment in productivity enhancing tools. Way forward, enhance public investment. Public investment should be enhanced, like prioritize irrigation, storage, rural roads and market infrastructure. Then shift focus from subsidies to long-term capital creation. That is important. We should move now away from subsidies, rather we should look for the permanent solution. Long-term capital formation should be done. Yeah. Provisions for yes, that is also constant. Yeah. Then strengthen institutional credit. So expand access to low credit loans for small and marginal farmers, promote digital lending and improve financial literacy to take out the farmers from the clutches of money lenders. Then promote technology adoption, like invest in research, mechanization and precision farming. Strengthen agricultural extension services. Then encourage public-private partnership model, PPP, in agriculture as well. Collaborate in warehousing, cold storage, value addition and marketing to improve efficiency. Okay. In conclusion, you could write, capital formation is the foundation of agricultural growth. Yet, both public and private investment in India face multiple constraints, including low income, policy inconsistencies, inadequate credit, and infrastructure gap. To overcome these challenges, India needs a balanced approach combining enhanced public spending, institutional credit access, technological support, and private sector participation. Without addressing these bottlenecks, achieving sustainable agricultural productivity will remain difficult. Moving on, next question again of 15 marks. What were the thrust areas of economic planning during pre-liberalization era? Pre-liberalization era means before 1991, 92, and they're talking about economic planning during this area, during this time from 1951 to 1991. Okay, so the period from 1951 to 1991 in India is known as pre-liberalization era, marked by a planned economic development model. India adopted a mixed economy with the aim of achieving self-reliance, poverty alleviation, that means curbing poverty, balanced regional growth, and modernization. The thrust areas of economic planning during this period were shaped by Soviet-style central planning, and they heavily focused on state-led industrialization, public sector dominance, and import substitution. So first is emphasis on public sector and state-led growth. So inspired by the socialist model, the government believed that the public sector should lead economic development. Next, major industries like steel, coal, power, defense, heavy machinery, and railways were placed under state control. Private sector participation was limited and regulated through licensing, known as the license Raj. So at this time, license Raj was prevalent. To do any business, you needed license. Okay. Then heavy industrialization strategy. Second 5-year plan, that is from 1956 to 61. This is also known as Nehru Mahalanobis model, designed by P.C. Mahalanobis, and it was based on the vision of Pandit Nehru, focused on heavy industries to build a strong industrial base. The aim was to reduce dependence on imports and promote self-reliance in production. Sectors like steel, cement, power, and machine tools were given priority. Import substitution and protectionism. So protectionism policies were practiced in this phase. India adopted an import substitution strategy to protect domestic industries. High tariffs and quotas were imposed on imports, and foreign investment was strictly controlled. While this promoted domestic manufacturing, it also led to low competitiveness and technological backwardness. India lagged in technology due to this. And it was done in order to protect domestic industries, so that because at that time our domestic industries were not that developed that they could compete with well established international industries. So that's why India followed the policy of protectionism. Agricultural development and green revolution. Initially, agriculture was neglected, but after food shortages in 60s, emphasis shifted. The green revolution in late 1960s introduced HYV, that is high yield variety seeds, irrigation, fertilizers, and mechanization. While it boosted food grain production, its benefits were regionally concentrated. The benefits were in few regions like Haryana, Punjab, okay, mainly in Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP. Then poverty alleviation and employment generation. Programs like Generated Rural Development Program (IRDP) and Food for Work were launched. However, due to population growth and ineffective implementation, poverty eradication remained slow. Then balanced regional development. Special focus was given to backward regions to reduce regional disparities. Establishment of public sector units, that is PSUs, in less developed states was aimed at promoting equitable industrial growth. So even in less developed areas, industries and PSUs were set up so that those areas can grow. Control over private sector and license Raj. Private industries needed government licenses to start, expand, or diversify business. This excessive regulation led to bureaucratic delays, inefficiency, and corruption that stagnated India's GDP growth. Conclusion: the pre liberalization era focused on state-led planning, public sector dominance, import substitution, heavy industrialization, and poverty alleviation. While these policies helped build up basic industrial base, achieve self-sufficiency in food grains, and develop infrastructure, they also created challenges like low productivity, technological backwardness, inefficiency, and slow growth. These limitations eventually paved the way for the economic liberalization of 1991. Yes. Main areas. Next is examining the objectives and components of Green Revolution in India. Green Revolution, again, an important topic. A question has been asked. The Green Revolution in India during the mid-1960s was a landmark agricultural reform aimed at overcoming chronic food shortages with the main food shortages. With the adoption of modern agricultural practices and technologies, it transformed India from a food deficit nation into self-sufficient one in case of food, particularly in food grains like wheat and rice. Objectives of Green Revolution: achieve self-sufficiency in food production to reduce dependence on food imports under PL 480. This was an agreement done by India and US. And under this agreement, US aided India, it helped India, it provided food grains to India, and that too. And why am I saying it aided India or helped India? Because US accepted payment in rupees, not in dollars. Okay, because there was shortage of foreign exchange in India. From the US, ensure food security by increasing the availability of cereals to meet the need of a growing population. Then increase farmers' income through higher yield and productivity, as I have already discussed. Next is modernize agriculture by introducing scientific farming practices and reducing traditional subsistence farming. Then stimulate rural development by generating employment in allied sectors like irrigation, fertilizers, and agro machinery. Component of Green Revolution were high-yielding variety HYV seeds introduced of dwarf wheat from Mexico and IR8 rice from Philippines. Then expansion of irrigation facilities, constructions of dams, canals, and tube wells for assured water supply. Then chemical fertilizers and pesticides, intensive use to improve soil fertility and protect crops. Mechanization, use of tractors, harvesters, and pump sets to boost efficiency. Then institutional support, role of institutions like ICAR, agricultural universities, and National Seed Corporation. Credit and subsidies, provisions of cheap loans and input subsidies to farmers. Government procurement and MSP, assurance of minimum price support, MSP, that this is the minimum price at which government is going to purchase the food items from you, so you can sell it at higher prices. For surplus production. Conclusion: the Green Revolution succeeded in transforming India into food grade surplus nation, ensuring food security, laying the foundation for agricultural modernization. However, it also led to regional disparities, environmental degradation, over dependence on few crops on which high yielding seeds were available, that is wheat and rice. Everyone started growing those crops only. Thus, while it fulfilled its immediate objective, the need for second Green Revolution, focusing on sustainability, inclusiveness, and diversification, remains essential. Why? No, US disrupted it because of the conflict that occurred between India and Pakistan and the major policies of US. US was trying to influence agricultural sector. India didn't allow it. India didn't give access to companies of US. Okay, all these things which again India is doing with Trump, and the conflict that occurred between India and Pakistan due to that. Why does interstate, I'm talking of Indo-Pak War of 1965, why does interstate disparity in income persist in India despite plethora of development initiatives undertaken by Government of India analyzed? So they are asking that government has taken so many initiatives, has done so much, still few states lag as you talk of income and other states lead. Why so? What's the reason for it? So just a minute. So, India's federal structure accommodates wide regional diversity in resource, infrastructure, and development. Despite multiple initiatives such as 5-year plans, backward region grant fund, finance commission transfer, and obviously finance commission is there. This disparity in the income of a state to overcome it, that's called horizontal imbalance. Yeah. And centrally sponsored schemes, income disparities among states remain significant. States like Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, and Karnataka contribute disproportionately to GDP. So, these are the major contributors to the GDP. While states such as Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, they lag way behind. Okay. Reasons for persistence of interstate disparity in income. First is unequal resource endowment. States rich in minerals, fertile land, or coastline, example Gujarat and Maharashtra, attract investment while resource poor states remain behind. So, when a state is rich in resources, people are going to invest there. Then industrial concentration. Industrial and service sector hubs are concentrated in a few states, leading to unequal job creation and higher per capita income. So few states have got more industries in comparison to other states. Again, there will be disparity. These states will earn more. Infrastructure gap, poor transport, energy, and digital infrastructure in backward states limits private investments. So again, there is infrastructural gap, technology. Few states lag in technology and infrastructure. Then governance and institutional capacity, corruption, poor policy implementation, and weak institutions in lagging states hamper growth. Human capital disparity, low literacy, poor health indicators, and skill gap again reduces this gap. Agricultural dependence. States depend on low yield subsistence agriculture, face low income, while diversified economies progress faster. So those states which are still dependent, same types of crops are grown, no diversification is there. Again, there will be disparity in income. Historical and structural factors, colonial neglect. These states which are lagging behind even today, they were neglected and exploited by Britishers. Caste-based inequality, uneven reform adoption have deepened gaps. Migration and brain drain, skilled workforce moves to developed states, widening the disparity further. Even in these states, even in the states which are lagging behind, the workforce, the educated, they are moving to the developed state obviously for jobs. Again, brain drain is there. Again, the disparity will grow. Government initiatives and limitations. Finance Commission, as I told you, Finance Commission transfers and GST devolution attempts to reduce fiscal inequality, but wealthier states continue to generate higher revenues. Then centrally sponsored schemes such as Manrega, PMGSY, PMAY, they provide support but face leakages and uneven implementation. Special category status and regional development program, NER vision, aspirational district program address backwardness, but results are mixed due to poor capacity building. Conclusion: despite continuous government efforts, interstate disparities persist due to structural inequalities, governance deficit, and uneven economic reforms. To bridge this gap, India must focus on human capital development, equitable infrastructure investment, decentralized planning, and tailored policies for lagging states. Balanced regional development is vital for India's long-term inclusive growth and social harmony. Next question, point out the main challenges faced by the small scale and cottage industries in Indian economy. So small scale and cottage industries, SSI, CSI, form the backbone of India's economy, providing employment to millions and contributing significantly to GDP, export and rural development. Despite their importance, they face multiple structural and operational challenges that hinder their growth and sustainability in a competitive economy. Main challenges faced by small scale and cottage industries: number one is financial constraint. So difficulty in accessing affordable credit due to lack of collateral and high dependence on informal sources. These small industries, they do not have collateral to get or to seek high loans from bank. That is a problem. Second, limited coverage and awareness of government credit schemes like Mudra and CGTMSE. They do not have access to these schemes which are being launched by government. They don't have that much information about these schemes, so they are not benefited by it. Then technological backwardness, outdated machinery, and low adoption of modern technologies reduce productivity and competitiveness. Inadequate R&D support and lack of digital integration. Then marketing and distribution issues, weak branding, limited access to markets, and high competition from large industries and imports. Inadequate e-commerce penetration, dependence on middlemen. Then infrastructure deficiencies are also there, poor access to power, transport, storage, and industrial clusters in rural and semi-urban areas. High production costs due to inefficiency. Then regulatory and compliance burden. Complexity in meeting multiple labor, taxation, and quality standards. Lack of awareness about a scheme like Udyam registration, GEM portal. Then skill labor shortage, lack of formal training, low productivity, and migration of skilled workers to urban areas or large industries. Competition from large scale and global players is also there. Difficulty in competing with mass production and cheap imports. Erosion of traditional handicrafts and handlooms demand. Impact of globalization policy shift. Exposure to international competition. Post-liberalization, limited capacity to integrate into global value chains. So these were the problems. Now conclusion, small scale and cottage industry continue to face structural, financial and technological bottlenecks despite being crucial for employment and inclusive growth. Strengthening access to finance, skill development, infrastructure, technology adoption, and market linkages is essential. With initiatives like Make in India, Digital India, One District, One Product, and cluster-based development, these industries can be revitalized to play a transformative role in India's economic future. Okay. So, guys, fourth question we are going to do. Let's take a break of 4-5 minutes, then we'll continue. Okay. नहीं स्टैट्स अगर क्योंकि स्टैट कितना कभी भी एसेंशियल नहीं होता है और आप स्टैट्स क्लिक करके बहुत ज्यादा स्टैट्स अगर नहीं आप लोग तो आप नंबर बहुत ज्यादा बिना स्टैट के आप क्वेश्चन नंबर आते हैं आप लोग अच्छे से मैं डिस्करेज करता हूँ स्टैट्स स्टैट्स ऑफ कोर्स सीधे ग्राफ बनाइए और नेक्स्ट ग्राफ बनाइए Okay, so let's get started. Next is, what are the methods used in measuring poverty and inequality in India? Analyze. So they are talking about various methods to use poverty and inequality. So poverty and inequality are critical issues in India's development discourse. Measuring them accurately is essential from policy formulation, welfare targeting, and monitoring socio-economic progress. Over the years, India has adopted various methods ranging from consumption expenditure surveys to multi-dimensional indices in multi-dimensional poverty measurements in order to capture the complex nature of deprivation. So methods of measuring poverty, consumption expenditure approach, it is based on household consumption expenditure surveys. Okay. Poverty line is defined in terms of minimum calorie intake. 2400 calorie in rural areas and 2100 calorie in urban areas as per earlier planning commission norms. So if you are consuming less than 2100 calorie, so in urban area, that means you are under poverty line. Anyway, nowadays people following weight loss, they consume less than 2100. Then Lakdawala Committee of 1993, it used calorie norms based poverty line. So poverty line was designed or was formed by using calorie intake. Tendulkar Committee of 2009, we have done this in great detail in classes, shifted focus to consumption expenditure, including food, education, health, clothing, and shelter. Then Rangarajan Committee of 2014, it again revised poverty line higher, accounting for broader living costs. So all the living costs that is necessary to live a decent life, that was incorporated here. Then monetary poverty estimates defined by per capita consumption expenditure and income thresholds used by Planning Commission and later Niti Aayog. Then multi-dimensional poverty index, also called as MPI, adopted by India in line with UNDP, United Nations Development Program. Multi-dimensional poverty idea was given by UNDP. Developed by Niti Aayog and from 2021 onwards, covering deprivation in health, education, and standards of living. MPI 2023 showed India lifted 415 million people out of poverty. Okay, so these many people were lifted out of poverty, 41.5 crores from 2005 to 2021. Methods of measuring inequality in India. So the most famous is Gini coefficient. It measures inequality in consumption oblique income distribution. Zero means perfect inequality. There is a Gini line. This is the line. Okay, perfect line. And this means this is showing the inequality. Yeah. Okay. That's how. And there is a formula also to measure it. Okay. This curve is drawn. It is called Lorentz curve, where this 45-degree line represents the perfect equality state. Anyway, so one is perfect inequality. India's Gini index consumption is 0.35 to 0.37, but higher for wealth distribution. Okay, for wealth distribution. So again, the Lorentz curve, as I told you, it's the graphical representation of inequality in income or consumption distribution. Then Palma ratio of share of top 10% to bottom 40%. It highlights concentration at the top, that how much wealth is concentrated at the top. Other measures like Kuznets ratio, wealth inequality data can also be used. Then analytical perspective, strengths of traditional poverty line provides simple, consistent estimates useful for trend analysis. Limitations, narrows focus on consumption, ignores access to healthcare, education, and living standard. Then shift to MPI, broader understanding of deprivation, captures non-income dimensions of poverty as well. There are other dimensions of poverty, not only income. It is also captured here. Inequality measures highlights the growing gap between rich and poor, essential for assessing redistributive policy like taxation subsidies. So when government has to make policies that how to redistribute, these parameters play a crucial role. Policy implication, poverty reduction must combine income growth with social sector investment to address multi-dimensional deprivation and inequality. Conclusion, the evolution of poverty and inequality measurement in India reflects the country's changing developmental priorities from calorie-based poverty, which we used earlier, to multi-dimensional poverty indices. While traditional measures help track income consumption gaps, MPI, and inequality indices provide a holistic picture going forward, integrating big data, periodic surveys, and global best practices can ensure more accurate, inclusive, and policy relevant assessment. Next is how have rural and urban economic development contributed to poverty reduction in India discussed. So they are asking, as I told you, that 41.5 crore people came out of poverty from 2005 to 2021. So they are asking what policies, what development policies were adopted in rural as well as urban area, which helped India in achieving this goal. So see, India has witnessed a remarkable decline in poverty levels over past few decades. As per Niti Aayog Multidimensional Poverty Index 2023, around 415 million people exited poverty between 2005-6 to 2019-21. Both rural and urban economic development have been important drivers through their contributions differ in nature and scope. Role of rural economic development. First is agricultural growth. The Green Revolution improved irrigation and crop diversification, raised farm incomes, and reduced hunger. Rural infrastructure schemes like PMGSY for roads, then Saubhagya for electricity, then Jal Jeevan Mission for drinking water. It improved the quality of life. Then employment security like Manrega, which provides you 100 days of guaranteed employment in rural areas. Provided minimum days of wage employment and reduced distress migration. So people cannot migrate in distress. Then financial inclusion like Jan Dhan Yojana, accounts were opened, and microfinance gave access to banking, credit, and insurance. That's called financial inclusion. Then skill development program like DDU, GKY created non-farm job opportunities. Non-farm means apart from agriculture. Skill development program that was undertaken by Indian government. Then role of urban economic development, industrialization and service sector growth. Urban centers drove IT, manufacturing and services, generating employment and higher wages. Next is house and infrastructure. Initiatives like PM Awas Yojana, where you will get a house, urban and smart cities mission improved living conditions for poor, urban poor. Education and skills, better access to higher education, vocational training, and skilling initiatives enabled upward mobility. Then health and social security schemes such as Ayushman Bharat provide healthcare protection to vulnerable urban families. Right, Ayushman Bharat, where you are given with a medical card and you can go and get treated in any government hospital nearly for free. Major operations can also be undertaken. Anyway, migration opportunities. Cities absorb surplus rural labor while remittances supported poverty reduction in villages. So the workers were absorbed by cities, and in village, these Jan Dhan Yojana and all, where the DBT, direct benefit transfer, was done to the account of the beneficiaries. So it reduced the poverty in village. Analytical view, rural development mainly targeted subsistence poverty, and basic amenities. Urban development created income mobility and new opportunities. Both are interlinked. Urban growth fuels remittances to villages, obviously, while rural development reduces excessive distress migration so that cities cannot get overloaded. Migration would be reduced when villages are going to develop. And as cities are going to develop, so the employment can be obtained in cities. Yet disparities remain. Rural poverty is concentrated in Bimaru states. Bimaru means diseased. Bihar, UP, MP, Orissa, all these come under it. Conclusion: rural and urban economic development together have been crucial in reducing poverty in India, while rural initiatives ensured livelihood, security, and access to essentials. Urban growth enabled sustained income expansion and employment opportunities. For long-term poverty eradication, India needs a balanced urban-rural strategy with focus on inclusive growth, skill development, and social protection. So this is way ahead. We have to do these many things more so as to curb proper poverty. Next is, what are the guidelines of decentralized planning process in India? So decentralized planning in India refers to the process of formulating and implementing development plans at the local level with active participation of people and local institutions. It was emphasized after 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment, which gave constitutional status to Panchayati Raj institutions and urban local bodies like ULBs. So from here you see, moving from center even to the level of states and then to the level of districts and then to the level of rural areas, Panchayati Raj was recognized. And urban local bodies like municipalities, municipal corporations, they are the administrative bodies of a town. So the Planning Commission, later Niti Aayog, also laid out specific guidelines to strengthen this progress. Guidelines of decentralized planning in India. Number one, people's participation, involvement of local communities, Gram Sabha, and civil society organization in identifying needs and priorities. Obviously, these bodies are more close to the people, so they understand that what their community needs. Then bottoms up approach, moving from bottom to the top. Planning starts at the village or ward level, consolidated at block, district, state, and finally national level. So from the ground it is going to start, from the district level, and then it is going to escalate to the national level. Role of local institution, PRIs and ULBs prepare plans for economic development and social justice as per 11th and 12th schedules of constitution. Integration of sectoral plans, local plans integrate agriculture, health, education, infrastructure, poverty alleviation, and social welfare schemes. Then decentralized resource mobilization, mobilization of local resources like taxes, fees, contributions, along with the state and central transfer for implementing local development plan. Use of local data and surveys, local level statistics, socio-economic surveys, and participatory rural appraisal are used to make realistic plans. Then convergence of a scheme aligning central and state scheme, Manrega, NRLM, Smart Cities Mission with local needs to avoid duplication. Capacity building and training, strengthening technical, managerial, and financial capacity of elected representatives and officials to prepare effective plans, transparency and accountability, social audits, community monitoring, RTI, right to information mechanism, to ensure accountability in planning and execution. Conclusion: decentralized planning in India reflects the spirit of democratic decentralization and participatory governance. It empowers local bodies to design context-specific solutions, ensures inclusiveness, and makes development more need-based. However, challenges like inadequate funds capacity, constraint, political interference persist, strengthening financial devolution, capacity building, and digital planning tools are essential for realizing the full potential of decentralized planning. Clear? So that's the end of section A. 4 questions were there. 4 major questions, and first question had 5 parts, second had 3, third had 3, and fourth also had 3. So 9 plus 5, 14 questions we have done. Then section B, first is discuss the component of food processing scheme, and as I said, very important. It was asked in GS paper 3 as well. Introduced by the Government of India. The food processing sector in India is considered a sunrise industry due to its potential in reducing post-harvest losses, generating employment, enhancing farmers' income, and boosting exports. Recognizing this, the Government of India has launched several schemes under the Ministry of Food Processing Industries to provide infrastructure, credit support, capacity building, and market linkages. So infrastructure development schemes are Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana PMKSY. And guys, as I always tell my students, that schemes that are launched by the government, they are very important, they are very crucial, and you should go through those schemes. Rather, you should make notes of the schemes that are being launched by government from 2004 to 2014, okay, for past 10 years. Sorry, 2000, sorry, I said 2004. From 2014 till 2024, okay, in the Modi regime, what all schemes were launched, okay. Getting my point? Clear? Okay. So next is mega food parks, again undertaken by government, provides common facilities like cold storage, warehousing, processing units, integrated cold chain, and value addition infrastructure, seamless farm to fork cold supply chain, creation, expansion of food processing and preservation capacities, grants for setting up processing units, okay. Then agro processing clusters, infrastructure for cluster based approach in production region, operation green, TOP to top to total. What is top? Tomato, onion, potato. Price stabilization and value chain development for perishables. Okay. Then financial support schemes that are being launched by government. So production linked incentives. If you are going to produce, you are going to do food processing, government is going to give you incentives. The scheme for food processing 2021 encourages investment in value-added products, branding of Indian food products globally, and incentivizes companies based on sales performance. Credit-linked capital subsidy, assistance for technology upgradation in processing units, Pradhan Mantri formalization of micro food processing enterprise PMFME, 35% credit-linked subsidy for small micro entrepreneurs, focusing on one district, one product. Capacity building and skill development. So human resource development scheme is also being launched for training, for entrepreneurship development, food testing labs and support. Then NIFTM and IFPT, that is centers, IIFPT, Centers of Excellence for Research, Innovation and Training in Food Technology. Quality and Safety Assurance, Food Safety and Quality Assurance Infrastructure Scheme, setting up modernizing food testing laboratories and strengthening FSSAI's role. Export promotion and market development, assistance for branding, marketing abroad, support for organic and ethnic Indian food products, linkages with eNAM portal, Apada and Export Promotion Councils. All these are apps. So, Government of India's food processing scheme collectively addresses, that's the conclusion, the sector's bottleneck from infrastructure gaps and post-harvest losses to lack of finance skills and global branding. Effective implementation of PMKSY, PMFME, and PLI can transform India into a global food processing hub, ensuring higher farmer income, reduced wastages, and enhanced export competitiveness. However, challenges of coordination, logistics, and farmer awareness must be overcome to realize full potential. Fine. Next is, do you agree with the view that India's foreign trade policy from 2023 to 2028 will boost the country's trade surplus, again related to trade? Tariff thing that has been going on with America, and I said it repeatedly to my students that this is very important. Questions will come. 2 questions came in GS 1 here. And generate employment, give reasons. Foreign trade policy 2023-28 marks a paradigm shift from incentive-based export promotion to a facilitation-oriented approach, aiming at making India a 2 trillion export economy by 2030. That's the vision. With an emphasis on process simplification, e-governance, and sectoral diversification. It seeks to enhance India's integration into global value chains, thereby potentially boosting the trade balance and employment. So provisions likely to boost trade surplus. Trade surplus means when our exports will be more than import. So first is shift to facilitation rather than incentives. So exporter-friendly digitalization, automatic approvals, and paperless system lower transaction cost. Transaction cost, as you all know, I teach it also. The pain that you have to go through while doing an investment is called transaction cost. Yeah, we did it in money and banking. So, in order to export, in order to start such a firm, you needed a lot of paperwork. You had to migrate a lot to government offices. Now all this has been reduced, digitalization has been done, paperwork has been also reduced substantially. WTO consistent measures, phasing out subsidies reduces disputes and improves credibility in global trade. Focus on new sectors, e-commerce, exports, dual use items, green technology, and districts as export hubs when the export basket. Widen the export basket. Rupee, INR trade settlement, encouragement for rupee-based trade can reduce forex outflow and strengthen the trade balance. Then special thrust on sunrise sector like electronics, pharmaceutical, processed food and service exports targeted for growth. Obviously, it's going to help in trade and exchange because if countries are adopting UPI, then you can directly transfer the money. The ease, the transaction cost will again be reduced. The transaction that used to take time, it can be done now within minutes. The things that were done in a day or two, so that will enhance the trade. Those countries are adopting UPI with which we can trade in rupees. So, employment generating potential. Labor intensive sector like textile, leather, handicrafts, and agricultural processing receive export facilitation, creating jobs in rural and semi-urban areas. E-commerce exports, simplified rules for small exporters, MSMEs, enable job creation through digital platforms. District as export hubs. Decentralization of trade promotion provides employment at the local level by linking local products to global market. PLI scheme synergy, complementary to FTP sectors like electronics and food processing, boost manufacturing jobs. Then challenges and critical view. Persistent trade deficit is there. Despite policy measure, India's import India's import dependence on crude oil, gold, and electronics may keep the trade balance negative. Next, global uncertainties, global tensions, protectionism, and slow global demand can limit export growth, as we are observing now. And you could write the Trump case as well. Then structural bottleneck, high logistics cost. Logistics, to transfer the product from factory to market, you need roads and all. Infrastructure gaps and compliance burden, government documents and all that you need. Still hamper competitiveness. Skill mismatch, employment generation in high-tech sectors may not absorb unskilled labor adequately. So India's FTP 2023-28 provides a progressive, facilitative, and WTO compliant framework that has a strong potential to diversify export, reduce trade costs. So this you could have written in conclusion. Next is, what are the structural shortcomings of public distribution system PDS in India? Explain. So the public distribution system in India's flagship program for ensuring food security by distributing subsidized food grains to the poor, right? That Modi ji is giving 80 food grains to 80 CR people. Despite being one of the largest social safety nets globally, the system suffers from multiple structural shortcomings that weaken its efficiency and effectiveness. Number one, leakages and diversions. A large share of food grains meant for beneficiaries gets diverted into open market due to corruption, weak monitoring, and lack of accountability. Shanta Kumar committee estimated that around 40% of subsidized grains actually reach the intended household. Inclusion and exclusion errors. That means errors in identifying the person and errors in removing the person. There are errors there. So the deserving will not get the benefit, undeserving will. Regional imbalances, states with better administration capacity like Tamil Nadu, Chhattisgarh perform well, while weaker states struggle, leading to uneven access across regions. Next is high fiscal burden. Obviously, it's a high fiscal burden. Procurement, storage, and transportation cost of FCI are huge, creating inefficiency and strain on fiscal resource. Excessive buffer stocks often leads to wastage, obviously. So the government godowns where these are stored, these godowns are not proper, they are not upgraded, and a lot of food grains get wasted. Poor quality of grain, beneficiaries often receive inferior quality of food grains due to poor storage and handling. Limited nutritional coverage. Focus is largely on rice and wheat, ignoring pulses, coarse cereals, nutritional requirements leading to unbalanced diet. Operational inefficiencies, delays in lifting stocks, weak supply, chain management, and inadequate use of technology reduces effectiveness. Conclusion, the structural shortcomings of PDS undermines its role in ensuring food and nutritional security, while reforms like digitization of ration card, DBT, Aadhaar-based authentication, all have shown a promise. Okay, so this you could have written. Next is justify the importance of disinvestment policy of India. Disinvestment means when government sells out its shares in the public sector enterprises. Okay, when government sells out its assets, okay, that is called disinvestment. It is a sort of capital receipt, right? Okay. So disinvestment refers to the government's process of selling or diluting its stake in public sector enterprises, introduced in 1990 as a part of economic reform Disinvestment has evolved into a key policy instrument for improving efficiency, reducing fiscal burden, and encouraging private sector participation. The policy is not merely about raising resources, but also about redefining the role of the state in economic activity. So the money that government will get, government can use it for welfare. Okay, so it's redefining the role of government. Anyway, fiscal consolidation and resource mobilization helps the government to reduce fiscal deficit by generating non-tax revenue. Then efficiency and competitiveness. Many PSCs suffer from low productivity, overstaffing, and bureaucratic inefficiencies. Disinvestment introduces market discipline, improves corporate governance, and enhances competitiveness. So, as like in most of the government companies, many PSUs, they are incompetitive, efficiency is low. They do not want to work. So when it will be privatized, when private people will own it, so market discipline will be there. Perform or you'll be kicked out. Next, optimal resource allocation. Government can focus on core sovereign functions, that is defense, law and order, welfare, instead of running businesses. Free up capital locked in inefficient PSCs for better use. Broadening capital market, public offers through disinvestment, deepen equity market, and encourage retail participation. Reducing political interference. Now see again, because these companies are dominated by political influence, so once they go into private hands, all this nonsense can be stopped. Reducing political interference, attracting foreign investments. Yeah, when these PSCs will run according to the market, when they would be run by the private players, then these companies would do good and foreign investments, FDI and all can be attracted. Encouraging private sector growth obviously enhances private sector participation in key industries, fostering competition and innovation, because when private players will compete, they will do innovation, they will do R&D. So criticism and challenges, concerns over devaluation of assets, job losses, and social objectives being ignored, resistance from trade union and political opposition. Political opposition, trade union, labor union, all are opposing it. Conclusion, that disinvest for obvious reasons, the disinvestment policy is crucial for transforming India's economy landscape by ensuring fiscal prudence, efficiency in enterprise, and greater private sector dynamics. However, its success depends on transparent valuation, safeguarding worker interest, and aligning with long-term development goals. So, fifth question, E part, what are the major implications of GSTC? Question on GST has been asked. Reforms for Indian federalism. Discuss. The goods and service tax implemented in 2017 represents India's most significant indirect tax reform. It subsumed multiple central and state taxes into a unified system, creating one nation, one tax, one market. While it enhanced efficiency and ease of doing business, it also fundamentally altered the fiscal dynamics of Indian federalism by redefining the taxation powers of unions and states. So positive implications for federalism. So cooperative federalism in practice. Establishment of GST Council with equal representation of union and state. Consensus-based decision making strengthens the cooperative spirit between state and center, right? Uniform taxation framework eliminates, as you all know, before GST, so many taxes and tax on tax cascading effect was there. So eliminates cascading of taxes and interstate trade barriers, promoting economic integration, creates a common national market benefiting all states. Then revenue, buoyancy and transparency. More revenue can be obtained. Widening of the tax base with better compliance through technology. States gain access to broader revenue streams in the long run. Compensation mechanism, union guaranteed compensation to state for revenue losses for 5 years, and it has been extended, ensuring fiscal security during transition. So states were not agreeing to GST. They were saying that they are taking so many taxes, it will be loss in revenue. So government said for 5 years, whatever is the loss, whatever you get from GST and whatever you used to get earlier, you will see the difference. That much we are going to give you to each and every state. Anyway, challenges and negative implication for federalism. So erosion of fiscal autonomy of states. States cannot independently change GST rates, must depend on GST Council. Decline in state freedom to levy taxes like entry tax, purchase tax, entertainment tax. Now, states cannot reduce or increase GST on their own. Permission has to be taken from GST Council. And all these taxes that were levied by a state, they have been removed. Union state tensions on compensation. As we saw in 2020, many chief ministers like Arvind Kejriwal, Mamata Banerjee, they were saying that center has this much loan of ours. Center should return our fund. So they were talking about this compensation. Dominance of center in GST Council. Though consensus is aimed at union holds one-third voting power. Only center has one-third, 66.6 is by remaining. Raising concerns of centralization, vertical imbalance, dependence on center for compensation increases, vertical fiscal imbalance, that is imbalance between state and center, weakens states' capacity to independently finance welfare and development programs. In conclusion, you could have written GST reforms mark a paradigm shift in Indian fiscal federalism. They have fostered cooperative federalism by institutionalizing GST Council and creating a unified tax system. And then you could have written about a bit of problems. Okay. Yes. How does? Obviously, it was regressive. Okay, I'll explain it to you. Don't worry. Okay, guys. So wait for 3-4 minutes. Let me take a glass of water. Then we'll return. Okay, guys, let's move on. So, question number 6. It is saying what are the causes of industrial backwardness in India? A part of question 6. Critically evaluate the role of new industrial policy announced in July 1991 towards correcting such backwardness. So, industrialization has been central to India's development strategy since independence. Despite planned efforts, India's industrial growth before 1991 remained sluggish compared to its potential, often described as industrial backwardness. The new industrial policy that was launched in 1991 of July marked a structural break by introducing liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Under NIP, LPG reforms were introduced at correcting these weaknesses. So, what were the causes of industrial backwardness pre 1991? So, first was license, permit, and quota raj. For even a small business you want to do, you need a permit, you needed a license, a quota. Then excessive state control, government was controlling everything. So, private players were not able to pop up. There were reservations for core industries only public sector could do, and these service sectors were having low efficiency. Then protectionist trade regime, import substitution with high tariff was discouraged. So other companies could not come to India and could not contribute in our industrialization. Then technological obsolescence, we do not have that upgraded technology that West was using. And small scale sector reservation while promoting equity, it restricted economies of scale and modernization. When you're talking about in small sectors, you are doing reservation so that you are trying to protect the small sectors. But at the same time, you are preventing the economy from advancing, from getting modern, right? Then industrial sickness, many PSUs and private units became financially unviable due to mismanagement, and that happened a lot with PSUs. Financially unviable, that means they started making losses. Low productivity of labor, skill gaps, rigid labor laws. Every time in the factory strike is there, hamari मांगे पूरी करो. So all this led to unproductivity. Then role of new industrial policy 1991 in correcting backwardness. So positive contributors, dismantling of industrial licensing. Most of the industries were removed from the requirement of license. Reduction in public sector monopoly, government interference, government monopolies were reduced. Foreign investment and technology inflow. Now the gates were open for the foreign companies to come in thereby. And when foreign companies come to your country, it's not that the companies only coming here for profit, they're also bringing their technology as well. So and that's what happens when we adopt to that technology, we grow, and that's why we grew at a faster rate after 1991. Then trade liberalization, as I told you, MRTP Act amendment reduced controls on large business houses, allowing economies of scale, large scale production will reduce the cost of prices, boost to competition and efficiency was also provided. Then limitations and criticisms, regional disparities widened, investment concentrated in already developed states, neglect of small scale industry, cottage industry, all these were neglected, jobless growth, and in this phase is known as jobless growth because GDP of India grew, but it mainly grew due to service sector, and in service sector highly skilled laborers are required. So these highly skilled laborers, engineers, doctors, finance experts, they grew, and with them Indian economy also grew. They became super rich. Few segments became very effective and they started contributing for GDP. But what about semi-skilled labor? What about unskilled labor? They used to get unskilled labor got employment in agrarian sector, in agriculture. Semi-skilled got employment in industrial sector, but we didn't have proper industries. Then deindustrialization risk, over dependence on imports in some sectors, and still electronics is one of them, and machinery created vulnerabilities. Then PSU privatization, again it is again disinvestment is still a hot topic. Opposition parties are opposing it, right? Conclusion, industrial backwardness in India was rooted in excessive regulation, inefficiencies and protectionism. The new economic policy of 1991 successfully dismantled many structural constraints and integrated India into global economy, leading to higher growth, technological adoption and competitiveness. Okay. Next is examine the implication. Every year they ask for India due to agreements on agriculture that are signed under the World Trade Organization, TRIPS Agreement, World Trade Organization. The Agreement of Agriculture AOA signed under WTO in 1995 sought to reform global agricultural trade by reducing distortions caused by subsidies, tariffs, and quantitative restrictions for India, where agriculture is livelihood source for over half the population. The AOA has mixed in because AOA is doing what? AOA is saying that countries should not give subsidies to their farmers. Why? Because if they would give subsidies, they would give quota. So the produce of these farmers will be cheap. And if it will be cheap, it will dominate the international market. If it will dominate the international market, so other countries will suffer. But that is harmful for developing countries like India, where more than half the population is doing agriculture. So we need to give subsidies to them. We need to support them. Anyway, AOA has mixed implication. It created opportunities for export growth, but also posed challenges to small and marginal farmers dependent on subsidies and state support. Key provisions of WTO AOA: market access, gradual reduction in tariffs and removal of non-tariff barriers, domestic support, amber, blue, green boxes, these were there, reduction in commitments. Acha, amber, blue, green boxes, these were the schemes that were launched by WTO. Anyway, reduction commitments on trade distorting subsidies, export subsidies, progressive reduction and eventual elimination of export related subsidies. Implication on India, first we talk about positive implications. So we could export our are agrarian products, access to new markets for rice, cotton, spices, and processed food due to tariff liberalization by other countries, competitiveness in certain crops, India's comparative advantage in labor-intensive crops, fruits, vegetables, marine products, policy space in green box, exemption for subsidies on research, extension service and rural infrastructure, food processing and value addition. WTO induced integration, encouraged private investment in agri-processing and global supply chain. Negative implication, pressure on subsidy regime, as I told you. India's input subsidies, fertilizer, electricity, irrigation fall under amber box. Yeah, drawing criticism for trade distortion. Then MSP and food security concerns, public stock holding and MSP procurement are contested under WTO rules. As I said, MSP cannot be given. Then small farmers vulnerability, import surge risk, our import will increase if India will reduce the tariff on the on agricultural produce from other countries. Asymmetry commitment, developed countries continued high subsidies. Developed countries are giving high subsidies and pressure was on us to remove it. Critical evaluation, India has largely complied with AOA commitments but resisted further liberalization in World Trade Organization negotiations. In Doha round, Bali and Nairobi summit, India opposed this regime that we should not give subsidies to our farmers and we should reduce our tariffs. India advocates a permanent solution for public stock holding for food security. Experience shows limited export gains due to supply side bottleneck and greater risk exposure for domestic farmers. So we are gaining less, we are losing more because we do not have that much infrastructure to export agri produce. Conclusion, WTO AOA has had dual implications for India. While it provided export opportunities and integration into global agricultural trade, it also constrained domestic policy space and exposed vulnerable farmers to global competition. For India, safeguarding food security, farmer livelihoods, and rural development is paramount. Hence, India's stance in WTO remains defensive, supporting multilateralism but demanding flexibilities for developing countries. That's what India's stand is, that you have to give some concession to developing countries. C. Why is national employment policy necessary for, they're talking about Manrega, for India? What are the initiatives taken by the government to facilitate employment generation? Explain. So India faces a dual challenge of large labor force, nearly 500 million, and persistent issues of unemployment, underemployment, and informalization, with nearly 90% of workers engaged in the informal sector and high youth unemployment. There is a pressing need for a comprehensive national employment policy to provide a strategic framework for inclusive and sustainable job creation. So what's the necessity for it? Demographic dividend utilization. What is demographic dividend? I made a video also on it. It's in YouTube, Plutus IAS. Demographic dividend means the population, the young population that we have as of now. It's a demographic dividend. Every country gets it once in a century or more, and we are going to lose it very soon. So if we do not provide employment to this youth, to these youths, we cannot get the output from them. We are going to waste our resource. Our factor of production. India's young workforce can drive growth if adequately employed. Otherwise, it risks becoming demographic liability. And who is going to take the burden of this youth? Already working class, previous generation, so there will be burden on the economy. Quality of employment. Most jobs are low paying, insecure, and lack social security. NEP can focus on formalization and decent work. Sectoral mismatches. Employment growth lags behind output, especially in manufacturing jobless growth. Skill gaps, structural mismatch between skills imparted, the skills that are given in school and colleges and which are required in the field are different. And market needs, inclusive development, NEP can ensure participation of women, marginalized communities, and rural workers. Future of work challenges, automation, digitalization, climate change necessities, forward-looking employment strategies. Next, government initiative for employment generation. Direct employment program Manrega, and I told you, provides 100 days of guaranteed wage employment in rural areas. Then Prime Minister's Employment Generation Program, PMEGP, supports self-employment and micro-enterprises. Then National Career Services, NCS, Employment Exchange, Modernization, Job Matching Portals. Indirect Employment Promotion, Make in India 2014. Boost manufacturing to create jobs, Startup India and Stand Up India. Just a minute. So it encourages entrepreneurship and innovation-driven employment. Skill India Mission of 2015, vocational training, PMKY to bridge, Pradhan Mantri Kausal Vikas Yojana to bridge gaps, production linked incentives, PLI schemes, then social security and labor reforms, sectoral focus, all this. In the correct. Yes. A national employment policy is essential to provide a cohesive, multi-sectoral strategy for tackling India's employment challenges, ensuring not just more jobs, but better jobs. While government initiatives have expanded opportunities through rural employment schemes, manufacturing push, and entrepreneurship promotion, challenges remain in ensuring formalization, inclusivity, and resilience to global disruptions. Okay. Question number 7. What is the sectoral composition of India's national income? Mention the most important source of national income in India. So the national income of India measured by GVA at constant prices reflects the contributions of different sectors of economy. Traditionally, agriculture was the largest contributor, but with the structural changes over the time, the share of industry and services has increased significantly. Sectoral composition of India's national income, number 1, primary sector, agriculture and allied activities. It currently contributes 17 to 18% of the GVA as per 2023-24. Now see, here stats are required, so you have to give it. But don't unnecessarily try to incorporate stats in the answer. If you know it, very good, then you can. But if there is a slight confusion, do not write it, else you'll get 0. Secondary sector, industry and manufacturing, compromises of manufacturing, construction, electricity, gas, water supply, all these things, 25 to 27% of GDP. And here, agriculture, forestry, fishing, mining were included. And it has declined over years, where it plays a key role in job creation and infrastructure development. Tertiary or sector or services includes trade, transport, banking, IT, communication, education, health, etc. Fastest growing sector due to globalization, digitalization and reforms accounts for largest share of GVA, 54 to 55%. Most important source for national income, service sector. Okay, within service sector, trade, transport, communication, finance, insurance, real estate, IT, BPM are the major contributors. Its dominance reflects India's transition to a service-led economy. Supported by IT export, we export ITs, we export financial services. Okay. The sectoral composition, then conclusion you could write, sectoral composition of India's national income highlights a shift from an agrarian to a service-driven economy. Okay. Next is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of full convertibility of Indian rupee? Do you believe that capital account convertibility is feasible under the present circumstances in India? Discuss. So, convertibility of currency refers to the freedom to exchange domestic currency for foreign currency without restrictions. India currently has current account convertibility, and that is since 1994, but we have partial capital account convertibility. Capital account, we teach it in international economics. Capital account means what? Three types of account: finance account, current account, capital account. In GS, you are mostly aware of current account. Capital account includes capital goods, machines, and all these things. Okay. Full convertibility means free inflows and outflows of capital. That's why we have not allowed it, because capital will start outflowing from India. Allowing the rupee to be determined purely by market forces. This issue has been debated since the Tarapur Committee reports of 1997 and 2006. Advantages of full convertibility. So first is integration with global economy, facilitates greater trade, investment and financial flows, attracts foreign capital, efficient allocation of capital, market driven exchange rate, reflects true economic fundamentals, boost to Indian multinationals, simplifies global operations of Indian firms, outward FDI and acquisitions, internationalization of rupee enhances its global status. But disadvantages: macroeconomic instability. Free capital flows can cause currency volatility and financial crisis, just like it happened 1997 Asian financial crisis. Speculative attacks, as you know, and I tell many times, just like stocks, currencies are also traded in the market. So speculative attacks, vulnerability to sudden capital flight in times of uncertainty. Whenever conditions go disarrayed, people will start taking out capital that will further lead to decline in currency. External shocks transmission, whatever will happen globally would affect India as well. Global recession and monetary tightening directly impacts the domestic economy. We are prevented. So many crises occurred, but effect was on us also. But that effect was not to high extent because we did not convert. Our capital account convertibility is partial, not high. Worsening of current account deficit. Okay, current account deficit will be worsened. Imports would increase. Feasibility under present circumstances in India. What are the supporting factors? First of all, we should not worry now because we have strong forex reserves of 600 billion USD. Then robust banking system, rising global stature of Indian economy and rupee, increasing role of India in global trade and services. All these promote the full account convertibility. Constraining factor, persistent current account deficit and dependence on imported energy, high volatility of portfolio flows, inflationary pressures and rupee depreciation episodes, incomplete financial market reforms, underdeveloped bond market, geopolitical uncertainties and global monetary tightening. Okay, so all this you could have written and concluded. Next is, what is the strategy of the Reserve Bank of India for exchange rate management? Discuss the recent changes in India's exchange rate policy. So exchange rate management is a critical component of India's macroeconomic policy as it affects external trade, capital flows, inflation, and overall stability of the financial system. The Reserve Bank of India follows a managed float or market determined exchange rate system with limited intervention, wherein the exchange rate is primarily decided by market forces, but RBI intervenes to curb volatility. Okay. So RBI strategy for exchange rate management, market determined exchange rate adopted post 1991 reforms, replacing fixed and dual exchange rate regimes. In interventionist approach, RBI is only going to intervene, else the exchange rate will be determined by the market. When will RBI intervene? See, the job of RBI is not to make rupees strong or dollar weak. The job of RBI is to keep the exchange rate stable. It should neither increase or decrease. It should remain constant so that trade can flourish. RBI intervenes through buying or selling of foreign currency, as we all know. Here the graph. Here we take exchange rate. Here let's say dollar supply, dollars, quantity of dollars. So this is demand of dollars. This is supply of dollars. Okay. So if demand has increased, so you, and this will give you exchange rate. So demand has increased, you can see exchange rate will increase. So what can RBI do? It can increase the supply, right? Bring down the. Then sterilization operation, RBI uses instruments like market stabilization scheme, open market operation, CRR, adjustment, all these things RBI does. Balancing multiple objective, exchange rate policy is linked with inflation control, export competitiveness, and capital flow management. Recent changes in India's exchange rate policy, we are now following greater flexibility. RBI has allowed more market-driven movement in the rupee, intervening only to prevent disorderly fluctuation. Liberalization of forex market, introduction of instruments like currency future swaps and ECB relaxation to deepen market. Then shift in intervention pattern, as I told you. So all these things you could have written in this answer. Then question 8, how do current finance commission's recommendation align with government fiscal consolidation goal? Elucidate. Just a minute, guys. Okay, so let's continue. Last question. How do the so Finance Commission? So the Finance Commission is a constitutional body mandate to recommend the distribution of financial resources between union and the state and states as well. Between states, it's horizontal imbalance. Some states earn more, other earns less. So that's called horizontal imbalance. Between center and state also there is imbalance. Center's revenue is very high and expenditure is low, whereas state's revenue in comparison to state's revenue is low and expenditure is high. That is vertical imbalance. So Finance Commission does what? It distributes the money of center to the state, and that too depending on the certain criteria. Okay. Its recommendations on fiscal targets, debt sustainability, and expenditure priorities have a direct bearing on India's fiscal consolidation strategy. Fiscal consolidation implies reducing fiscal deficit and public debt to sustainable levels while ensuring adequate public expenditure for growth. Number one, deficit and debt target. The 15th Finance Commission recommended adherence to FRBM framework, fiscal responsibility and budget management, aiming to reduce the union government's fiscal deficit to around 4% of the GDP by 2025-26 and general government debt to GDP by 60%, 40% of union, 20% of state. These targets align with the government's medium-term fiscal consolidation roadmap. Revenue mobilization, recommendations to improve tax buoyancy through better GST compliance, rationalization of tax rates, and widening the tax base to support higher revenues, reducing dependence on borrowing. Then expenditure rationalization. So Finance Commission emphasized linking grants to outcomes, efficiency, and performance-based transfers, encouraging states to spend more responsibly. Prioritization of health, education, and infrastructure ensures quality expenditure while controlling unproductive spending. Okay. Then borrowing limits. The Commission prescribed calibrated state borrowing limits with conditional relaxation to maintain debt sustainability while supporting growth needs. Fiscal discipline incentives, performance-linked grants for poor sector reforms, local bodies, and sectoral reforms. Incentivize states to adopt fiscal prudence. Conclusion, the Finance Commission recommendations complement the government's fiscal consolidation and goals. That all you could have written. Okay. Next is, what was the why was the public sector given a leading role in industrial development during pre-liberalization era? So again, a wonderful answer could be written because mostly people say that private sector should have been given more role and all these things, but there were certain reasons we will understand here. And it was a good step taken by the Prime Minister and economic decision makers of that time. So answer, at the time of independence, India inherited a weak industrial base, regional disparity, shortage of capital, and dependence on import for essential goods. The Industrial Policy Resolution of 1956, IPR, known as the Economic Constitution of India, and these are the keywords important, assigned the public sector a commanding role in industrialization. This was in line with Nehruvian model of planned development, which emphasized state-led growth. So what was the rationale for public sector dominance in pre-liberalization era? So lack of capital with private sector. So first of all, how could privates, and that I always say mockingly, that you are saying private sector should have been given a major role. But the question is that private sector did not have that much money at that time. So how could they lay down heavy industries? So it was not possible at all. It's just like saying that if Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel would have been the prime minister, okay, he would have died in 1950. Then Nehru only, he was next in the line. So all these are the hollow talks, because private sector was not having the money. How could they invest? How could do you expect them to run the heavy scale industries, to build roads? Yeah, it was a timely process. So the initiative was good, and these industries PSUs performed well under Nehru. It was after Nehru 1964 that these PSUs started deteriorating and their development stopped. Lack of capital with private sector. Indian private entrepreneurs lacked resources to invest in large scale, capital intensive industries like steel, energy, transport. Second, strategic and basic industries, defense, railways, energy, heavy machinery. These were vital industries, were considered to be vital. And you could not give it to private sector. Why? Because then energy would have been so expensive that people could not have afforded electricity. Travels in rail. Even today, poor can travel in rail. Even today, if railways get privatized, at least 5 times the tickets will increase of every class. So just imagine how could that have been done at that point of time when 75% of the people were poor. Public sector was tasked with building the commanding heights of the economy. It was the task in front of public sector. Import substitution, industrialization. It was the need of the hour. India needed to be self-reliant. Why would any private sector do that? Private sector are concerned with their own benefit, their own profit. Nation comes second. That's the agenda of firms. India adopted inward-looking industrialization to reduce dependence on foreign countries. And guys, do not forget, we became slave of Britishers, and Britishers came here as traders. And recently we got independence, and again you were expecting to open the gates for the foreigners so that we could become again a colony of USA or Russia. So public enterprises were created to produce domestic goods, capital domestic goods. Okay, planned development approach. 5-year plans gave priority to heavy industries, Bhilai, Rourkela steel plants. Public sector investment was seen as the driver of overall economic growth. Employment generation and regional equity. Public enterprises were established in backward regions so that that region can, we have discussed it, that region can grow. So 2 questions from that era, planning and this. To reduce regional disparities and create jobs. Infrastructural development was also required, infrastructure and logistics. Core infrastructure, power, transport, communication required long gestation. Gestation means waiting period. And low return on investment. Which private firm could wait for 15 years to get return? And low return on investment, unattractive to private players. Then socialistic ideals. At that time, we were trying to overlift the entire society. So we were following socialistic ideals instead of capitalism. Inspired by Soviet planning and the directive principles of state policy, the state assumed a welfare role through industrial control. Outcomes of public sector led industrialization. Now, what occurred due to private sector? We should also look at this. Creation of a strong base in steel, power, coal, transport, and space research. We are not dependent on NASA in space. And now world is also acknowledging our satellites. We are launching satellites of other countries as well. Expansion of employment opportunities. So many of the middle class, so many of us who belong to middle class, their fathers or grandfathers or government employees. How? It was due to PSU only. Yeah. So you may say nearly 1.5 generation got employment due to these PSUs. So expansion of employment opportunities and regional development. However, inefficiencies, bureaucratic control, and low productivity became visible by 1980s. Okay, it started during the time of Indira Gandhi in 70s, and in 1980s it became visible, necessitating reforms. Conclusion: the dominance of public sector in India's pre-liberalization era was a historical necessity. It was a historical necessity to build an industrial base, ensure self-reliance, and achieve balanced regional growth in the absence of private capital, because there was no private capital and foreign investment, and there was no foreign investment. While it succeeded in laying the foundation for modern industry, its inefficiencies later highlighted the need of new industrial policy, which was launched in 1991. Okay, so that was a well balanced answer. Last question of the paper: discuss the initiatives launched by Reserve Bank of India to promote financial inclusion. Again, very easy question it is. Financial inclusion refers to ensuring access to affordable financial products and services such as banking. Always remember, these are the ingredients of financial inclusion: banking, credit, insurance, and digital payments for all sections of society, especially the weaker and marginalized group. The Reserve Bank of India has played a pivotal role in advancing financial inclusion as part of its developmental mandate, complementing government's scheme like Jan Dhan Yojana. RBI's key initiative for financial inclusion policy framework, financial inclusion plan. Since 2010, banks are mandated to prepare board approved inclusion plans with targets for rural branches, credit, and ICT based delivery. Financial literacy centers, FLCs, set up by banks under RBI guidelines in rural areas to spread financial education, to teach people that you can open account in bank, you can take loan from bank. Nationalization strategy for financial inclusion 2019 to 2024. RBI's roadmap to ensure universal access to financial services. Banking access and infrastructure, everyone can have access to bank. So all these are steps that RBI is taking from 2000. We do not know of it. Business correspondent model, BC, in 2006 allowed banks to engage BCs to deliver services in unbanked villages. Those villages where banks are not there, BCs can provide banking services. They are sponsored by banks only. Lead bank scheme strengthening district level plan for outreach and monitoring. So on the district level it was done. Differentiated banking models, licensing of a small finance bank, AU, small finance bank, Bandhan, small finance bank. You can get small finances, 50,000, 1 lakh, 5 lakh from there. And payment banks to cater to undeserved segments. Credit and priority sector lending, PSL, 40% in India, to sectors like MSME, education, rural, that is agriculture. You can write agriculture here. Poor. So to these people providing loans. Priority sector lending mandated lending to agriculture, MSME, weaker section, Kisan credit card, general credit card, GCC. Simply from Kisan credit card, you can take funds up to 1 lakh. Simplified access to small credit. Then technological interventions. UPI, Unified Payment Interface, promoted by RBI with NPCI, revolutionizing digital payment. Now even auto rickshaw driver has UPI. Aadhaar enabled payment system, AEPS. With your Aadhaar, you can get the payment. There are many stores. You can go to that store, you can give your Aadhaar number, account number, and they will just ask a signature and all, and The amount that you withdraw from your bank account, that can be withdrawn from there. Facilitated last mile access. Digital banking units, RBI initiatives to expand digital financial inclusion. Consumer protection and literacy. Even today, messages come from RBI that such things are fraudster. Your bank will never ask for these things. What is this? To prevent you from scams. Banking Ombudsman Scheme 1995. Now integrated Ombudsman Scheme 2021 to safeguard consumer interest. Financial literacy weeks. There are weeks in an year organized by RBI that in a particular district or in a particular city they will go and they will financially literate people. Awareness campaigns on themes like responsible borrowing, digital security, all these undertaken by RBI. Achievement. Over 80% of adults now have bank account. That's wonderful. And World Bank Global Findex. It is a standard recognized throughout the world. This Findex has given this data. Financial Index, Findex. Rapid digital adoption via UPI, AEPS, and mobile wallets. Enhanced. Now you can see even your fathers, even old people, everyone is using UPI. Enhanced credit outreach to small farmers. As I told you, credit cards they have. MSME and SHGs. Challenges remaining. Yes, still there are some challenges like dormancy of Jandhan and rural account. Jandhan accounts are becoming dormant. Okay, dormant means inactive. Low financial literacy among women and rural poor. So people who are poor in rural areas and women particularly, they are not that much financially literate. Dependence on cash, informal sector. Digital divide in remote and tribal areas. So guys, you could have written this. That was the entire paper. Again, below average the paper was. It was not at all difficult, very easy. All these things are very basic and we do it in our regular classes. I hope you understood. Thank you for your time. We'll meet with another video. Till then, bye-bye.